Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
Welcome back to the Gentle Art of Crushing It podcast. My name's Randy Smith, and I'm going to be your co-host today. And really excited to have Andrew Freed with us today. Andrew is a multifamily investor. He's got over $17 million in assets under management. He's an investor. He's a project and property manager. He's a mentor. He's also an investor-focused agent, and he runs the largest real estate meetup in Worcester. So, Andrew, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right in. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about yourself and how you found yourself to where you are today?
Happy to. So it all started back during COVID, where prior to that, I did the normal American dream, where I went to a good school, I got a good education, I got a good master's, I got a job at a prestigious organization, made six figures, bought a swanky condo in Boston. Like, I made it, right? I made it by all accounts. But during COVID, after I ran out of things to do, we ran out of video games to play, movies to watch, things to kill my time with, I found Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I really had to come face to face with, like, is this the life I really wanted to live? And I was like, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of his big main building wealth vehicles was real estate. So I ended up looking at my net worth. I had Mint at the time. And I realized that at that time, my net worth was about $250,000. $200,000 of my net worth was in this condo I bought 5 years ago that I completely forgot about. And It literally took me 10 years to save up $50,000. And I'm like, at this rate, I'm never going to reach financial independence. I could work for 30, 40 more years. I'm still going to get nowhere close to it. And I really had to take a change. I really had to make a change. Really had to change the status quo. And then at that point, that's kind of when I decided to go into real estate. And I took out a HELOC, a home line of credit, on my one-bedroom condo in Boston for $200,000. And I used that to start buying multifamily real estate in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is 45 minutes west of Boston, which that's where my condo was. Okay. And then from there, I started expanding in primarily value add multifamily. And 3 years later, I'm up to about 150 units or so.
Are you interested in real estate investing but don't know where to get started or think you don't have the time or money? Are you stuck in your W-2 because the golden handcuffs make it hard to walk away? If this sounds like you, check out impactequity.net and schedule some time to talk with the founder, Randy Smith. Randy went from massive income to leaving his W-2 through passive income, and he can help you do the same. www.impactequity.net.
Unbelievable. So from 0 to 150 units in, is my math right? Call it 4 years?
About 3.5 years. Yep, 3.5 years. I closed my first multi December 2020. And, in real estate, it's not a straight shot. Like, I didn't get 50, 50, 50. It's an exponential growth. Just like, in business and anything, it happens at an exponential rate. And I think my first year, I got up to 7 units. My second year, I got up to 18 units. And then my third year, I think I got up to 135 units. So it was kind of a progression. And same with investing, it was a progression. The fact that I started with my own money, and then I started kind of partnering with people, joint venturing 50-50. And then when I kind of ran out of my own cash, that's when I started raising cash money from investors. So it was kind of progression on that front as well.
Awesome. Well, let's dig into that. So there's a lot of different subjects there that I want to hear about. So first of all, you mentioned that you took a HELOC, which it sounds like going back to buying that initial condo was a really good investment decision for you because you were able to create some equity over the course of a couple of years there that you could then leverage to build this real estate empire years later. So looking back, do you think when you were jumping into that, did you have any idea, one, that you were going to be leveraging this in the future, or was it just kind of dumb luck that you happened into that capital?
So Through my entire 20s, I was always a saver. I was always really good at saving money, keeping a good budget, spending less than I made, right? And my whole thought process with getting that condo was I just didn't want to pay rent to somebody else. I wanted to get that to go towards a mortgage. So it really came from a saving mentality, and it really didn't come from a wealth building mentality. And to your point, it was honestly just dumb luck.
Mm-hmm.
I literally bought the cheapest condo in the area because I wanted to keep my expenses as low as possible. I got a condo for like $222,000 in Boston, and not the best area because my purchase price was so low. But I ended up buying on the path of progress, which in Boston, there's a nice area called Southie. I bought in Dorchester, which was right next to it. And the path of progress spilled over, and as a result, the appreciation doubled. So it was honestly, so I mean, that's a good lesson for somebody, is like, if you are trying to like buy, build a lot of equity, you always want to look in the path of progress and not buy where it's nice to live, but where it will be nice to live in 5 years or so.
I love it. I love it. So if you've got the crystal ball and you know where that progress is going, you can figure it out, but you can generally see things that are showing it's edging in one specific region. So interesting. Okay, well let's dig into that first deal if we can. Like the magic of the first deal seems to be something that we like to focus on, because if it wasn't for that first deal, you would have never got to the second, to the third, or the 135th as it was. So tell me about that. What did that process and that journey look like?
So I started like listening to BiggerPockets religiously, right? And Brandon Turner was a big mentor of mine. And on one of his podcasts, he says, if you house hack 10 multis in 10 years, that's 30 units, and that's enough to retire. And that seems super realistic to me. Save 5% down for a multifamily every single year. Like, I could do that. So that was my initial plan to reach financial independence. So I ended up taking that HELOC, and I used the money from the HELOC as a down payment with an FHA loan on a 3-family in Worcester, Massachusetts. And when I got that property, I bought that property around, I think, for $560,000. It was a 3-unit, all 3 beds, 1, 2, 3, a 9-bedroom, 3-bath, right? All mirror copy images. Primarily only needed cosmetic upgrades. So I ended up renting 2 of the bedrooms, $1,600 each, equaling $3,200 in revenue, and my mortgage on the building was $3,200. So I ended up living in the 3rd unit for free, renting out the condo, and that's kind of how I got my start in real estate with my first deal. And it was honestly one of my best deals because it was my first, and it got me in the game. So
yeah, fantastic. I love that story, and I hear something similar to that over and over and over again. That first purchase is the scariest, but once you do and you get in and you start to see the power of, essentially a house hack on steroids really is what you had there, because it was a 3-unit, not just 1 unit. And if you can get to this point where you've got multiple people that are paying your mortgages and you're living for free, that just starts to really compound your ability to save for that next one. So even though you're leveraging your HELOC, I suspect your cash flow started to grow pretty quickly, even with just those 4 doors early on. Was that the case?
Yeah. So I did 2 cosmetic upgrades to the building. And right now, I think the building brings in around $6,000 in revenue. My mortgage on it's like $3,400. So that building is fantastic cash flow and property. And my condo's cash flows right now as well, a couple $100 a month. So just that one move alone, created a couple $1,000s in cash flow.
I love it. Okay, so that went so well, you decided to do it again, I suspect, right?
Yeah, so I remember I had that $200,000 HELOC. Well, I still had $150,000 on it, so the bank was open, ready to go, and that's
nice.
That's exactly what I decided to do: just buy more real estate. So my neighbor ended up wanting to sell his 3-family. He was knocking on all of his neighbors' doors to see if anybody was interested in buying it. So I ended up buying 151 Ingleside. He was selling 150 Ingleside, literally right across the road.
Nice.
So I ended up meeting him. He wanted $450,000 for the property. It hit the 1% rule day one at like 3 or 4% interest rates. Made sense all day. So I ended up taking $80,000 from my line of credit. I took $40,000 from stock and crypto. Ended up bringing 25% down to that property, which I still own today. And then at that point, that's when I discovered syndications, right? But not on the GP side, on the limited partner side. And my
Okay.
mentor was putting together a syndication, 132 unit purchase in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is the third largest city in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And at that point, I was still on about $60,000-$70,000 on my line of credit, and I was paying 3% on that line of credit at that time. It was during COVID. This syndication was offering about a 15 to 20% return. So for me, it made total sense. I borrow at a 3, I can put into a fund that gives me 15 to 20, I collect the difference. Simple concept of arbitrage. That's how wealth is built, right? And that's exactly what I ended up doing. I took $65,000 from my line of credit and I put it into the syndication as a limited partner. 1 year later, that syndication sold for an 89% return.
I love it. I love it. Yes, those are the great stories.
Yep. So I ended up taking that money from that syndication and I invested that in a 5-plex in Worcester, Massachusetts, where I split 50-50 with my partner. And then we end up bringing the value. So we bought that for $650. We end up bringing the value on that 5-plex to around $910,000. We took out a line of credit on it for $160,000, and we used that $160,000 to buy a 9-plex in West Warwick, Rhode Island, for $715,000. Needs about $200,000 worth of work, and it's going to be worth about $1.4 million. So more or less, I took that money from that HELOC, which wasn't even my money; it was the bank's money at the end of the day, and I created about $600,000 in net worth. Right, I doubled my money in my first syndication. Then I essentially got my money back in that 5 unit, and then I transitioned that to this 9 unit, where we making about $300,000-$400,000 in equity on that one as well.
Fantastic. So this is the classic scenario where leverage and real estate come together just to create amazing opportunities and amazing wealth growth in a very short amount of time. You've been able to do that. Now, this was during a pretty unique time if you were to take a look at economic cycles and everything that was going on in this space. But that same strategy works just as much today as it did during those crazy times. So when you're looking at deals today, are you leveraging that same strategy, or are you using other strategies today to continue to grow your portfolio?
So I always look for pockets of money that I can utilize to expand my portfolio. Like my first house hack, prior to leaving, I ended up HELOCing that as well, because that's when it's your primary residence. You can go up to 100% leverage, right? Yep. So I ended up taking out a $75,000 line of credit on that property and used that to split with a 3-plex with my buddy. And then I ended up house hacking another property with 5% down. And because I was an agent at that point, I got a seller credit. I only up having to grab like $15,000 from my line of credit to get another 3-family, right? So,
sure.
So, I mean, yeah, to your point, I use that strategy all the time to buy more real estate. Either, I refinance or I use lines of credit. I do not like to sell. I don't like to pay taxes. Okay. But I do use that strategy. But to your point, once I ran out of my own money, at that point, I started raising money from investors.
Perfect. And that's the natural kind of introduction into the next phase. So there are folks that are listening to this podcast today that they're thinking, wow, like I'd love to get involved with something like this, but I don't have the time. I don't live in a market where, 3-plex and 4-plex and 5-plex, that's not really a good option, just simply because of the dynamics of what's going on in the market. So you actually partner with folks to give them the opportunity to share in the upside, but it's not a true syndication, as you were saying earlier. So what kind of structures do you use to work with potential passive investors so everybody gains?
So unlike many other areas in the United States, Worcester has a plethora of multifamily. About 30 to 40% of the housing stock is multifamily. If I throw a rock, I almost have a 50% chance of hitting a multifamily property. So it's very effective. And usually find multifamilies in old mill towns, because a lot of them have workforce housing. And most multifamilies, at least in New England, were constructed between 1880 and 1920. That's when the big workforce industrial era kind of happened. So we have a ton of them in the area, and that's pretty much all I specialize in is value add multifamily. The way I structure my deals is I do a joint venture. So we find an opportunity, we raise money from investors, we give them an active role, meet quarterly, vote on stabilization, come up with a plan together, and we kind of act as the boots in the ground, and we offer an 8% preferred return and then a 50-50 split after that. Our primary plan is to buy value add multifamily where there's a large delta between current rents and market rents, and then get the rents up as quickly as possible, and then within a year or two refi the money out and get as much principal back to the investors as much as possible, and then preferably removing the pref return, and then it's just becoming a 50-50 split there on out. It's kind of the goal.
Love it. So they even though they get their capital back, they maintain their ownership in the opportunity 50-50. And then you guys essentially from that point on, all cash flows are just split 50-50 until forever. Is that how these go?
That's exactly correct. I mean, our plan is not to sell. If we do sell, we try to 1031 into other properties. But yeah, any refinance money is split 50-50. Even though this isn't a preferred method, any disposition is split 50-50. Any cash flow is split 50-50. That's exactly correct. And why our investors and our partners like this so much is because they can use that same money over and over and over again in different deals. In a 5-year span, they might be able to reuse that same 100K in 2 deals, right?
That's amazing. Yeah. So it's almost like they're burring, but not having to do the activity of the burr. And they could move $100,000 across 5 properties and then have 5 properties cash flowing with no initial capital in the deal.
Paying them in perpetuity. That's exactly correct.
Fantastic. And since they're owners, they get all of the tax benefits that come along with being an owner of real estate. So interesting. Now, have you done cost segregations, or are you taking advantage of accelerated depreciation? Or
always, we always do cost segregations on all of our properties. Yeah, and I mean because it's a joint venture, they can utilize those cost segregation studies a little differently than if it's a syndication. But yeah, we absolutely do that for every single property we own. Especially now while it's at 80%. Well, I think it just decreased to 60, right? For 2020.
Well, let's see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully it goes back to 100, right?
Yep, exactly. But in any event, we absolutely use cost segregation studies. They're a fantastic way to shelter income for sure.
Awesome. Very good. So let's kind of dig into the business a little bit. Obviously, part of being a passive investor is really getting to know your operator, doing the due diligence, understanding how this asset's going to be managed moving forward. So are you property managing all of these assets yourself, or do you leverage third-party property management? What does that look like?
I think it depends on where the asset is, but we do take a heavy role in property management and stabilization. That's kind of what our specialty is, to get assets to perform well and in a quick manner. And the quicker we can get it to perform, the quicker we can do a cash out refinance. And cash out refinance is also tax-free money, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another real fantastic way to avoid paying taxes as well. But yeah, we primarily specialize in asset management, and we do property manage the majority of our of the portfolio. I do have a 32 unit in Lancaster, South Carolina, which we do hire a third party property manager, but we do asset manage it pretty closely.
Okay, and then the construction process and the rehab or renovations on the front end, is that your team or you specifically doing those, or what does that look like?
It's split between my teammates, depending on the project and who's the point of contact. But we absolutely do manage the renovations ourselves. We don't have a construction crew in house, but we have close relationships with a lot of vendors in the area. So we do manage a lot of the stabilization and the construction to get these assets to perform.
Got it. Very cool. Well, so what do the next handful of years look like for you? Are you in acquisition mode? Or are you in stabilization, or a combination of the two? What are you guys focused on today?
So currently, I think up to 150 units, and we have like 100 units under contract. So we're buying right now. I mean, deals are out there. I mean, once you get to a certain level and people start seeing you're an active player in the market, people start bringing you deals left and right. And that's the reason why we started raising capital, because we had all these amazing deals coming our way, and we didn't have the capital to take it down ourselves. So what are we going to do in that scenario? Just let amazing deals fall through our fingers? Like, why?
Sure. Sure.
So you might as well offer that benefit to other people out there, and that's exactly what we did. And yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, exciting stuff. So you're truly seeing the hockey stick of following that law of the first deal, and to go from 150 to potentially add another 100 units. This should be a pretty exciting year for you, Andrew.
Yes. And I just closed on my third house hack a week ago as well. That was a fantastic deal. I think I got a 4-unit with a bonus 5th unit in the basement, and I'll be living in the bonus 5th unit. And day one, the rents are $500 above my pity. So,
Unbelievable,
fantastic deal. Yeah.
So, and do you let them sit? Do you let them sit empty, or do you force people out so you can do the renovations and raise the rents, or do you just wait till people move out naturally?
I utilize the binder strategy, which essentially more or less you negotiate rents with the current tenants in place.
Okay.
So usually the strategy is, you meet with the tenant, you develop rapport. You ask if there's any deficiencies associated with the property that you can address. Usually something small like a broken window, a broken faucet, which I'll pay a couple $100 all day to buy goodwill. Then at that point, I show them, rental comps. I'm like, okay, so for this 3-bed unit, I get $2,000. Like, you're paying $1,200. Like, what do you think makes sense? Right. And it's human nature to choose the 50% mark. Right. So a lot of times they'll choose like $1,700. And the key with the binder strategy is getting their tenant to propose their solution and you not implement the solution. Because if somebody's proposing a solution, there's way more buying from them than if I'm telling you this is what the rent is. Right.
Yep.
And if I can keep the in-place tenants and maybe have like a $200 delta between market and what their unit is, like that makes sense for me all day, because if they leave, I might have to put $15,000 to $20,000 into that unit, right? But if there's a $200 delta, like how long is it going to take me to pay back that $15,000 to $20,000? Like $2,400 a year would what it would break out to. It would literally take me 7 to 10 years to pay back that unit term. So a lot of times, like utilize the binder strategy, like get the rents pretty close to market, and save on stabilization costs. And it also allows me to keep the velocity of my deal flow going, because I can move from deal to deal very quickly and not be sunk down in a huge value add deal.
Yeah, I love it. So, and is it binder, BINDER strategy?
Yes, the binder.
Interesting.
Strategy.
I've never heard that. I love that idea as well, where if you can get them to suggest the number, then they're going to be bought in. They're going to feel like they're getting a deal, even though they're increasing their rent. And you certainly get a deal because, they're going to be paying more. And if it was already cash flowing before you even approached the binder strategy, then it's all positive for everybody. Very good.
I mean, it's a win-win, because at the end of the day, if they rent that same unit down the road, they're going to have to pay market, right? So it's honestly a win-win for everybody. So and honestly, that the best real estate investors, in my opinion, find ways to create win-wins for everybody. And don't just try to institute a solution, get hard-nosed, because a lot of times that ends up biting you in the butt, like in the form of evictions, right? Like I'm in a very tenant-friendly state. Like if I was very hard-nosed with all of my decisions, I would deal with a lot of evictions that can take 4 to 6 months. Meanwhile, I can try to negotiate, rents in the middle, or I can do cash for keys and pay them to leave. Right? Like I'll pay $1,000, $2,000 all day for them to leave if it saves me 4 to 6 months of vacancy. Like it saves me so much more money in the long run. But I know so many landlords that won't do that because it's all about the principles. Like, why am I paying this tenant who hasn't paid me rent for 2 months? It's like, if you do it from a return on investment standpoint, it makes sense all day.
I love it. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Very good. So I'm curious, it's been an interesting couple of years with the economy, with interest rates. How has the interest rates raising over the last couple of years impacted your business? And what do you see in the coming year or two?
So in 2023, when a lot of syndicators and capital raisers and real estate investors were hurting, I was flourishing. I ended up closing 100 units in 2023. And the reason why I did that is because what's Warren Buffett say? Get fearful when others get greedy, and get greedy when others get fearful. And that's exactly what I did. Like, I just found deals that made sense at a 7 or an 8, right? If it makes sense at a 7 or 8, it's got to make sense when interest rates go down to a 5 or a 6, right?
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what I ended up doing. So interest rates don't scare me. It's just a variable in the equation. It all really means you have to offer less than the deal for the numbers to pencil out, right? And at the end of the day, I've made a majority of my net worth in real estate, and I believe in real estate in the ups and down markets far more than the stock market or crypto and any other asset class out there.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so interest rates really created opportunity for you. I'm curious, have you seen, all the headlines have said that rents are decreasing across the board. What are you seeing with your assets? Are you seeing year over year increases, or are they still pretty after stabilization, of course, but are you able to still get increases on your rents at this point?
Absolutely. I'm seeing year over year increases all day, at least in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Massachusetts is very insulated from the rest of the country. And there's a really good reason for that. It's because Massachusetts has a ton of regulations and it's incredibly challenging to build, right? So as a result, the housing stock is not growing as quick as the demand, right? So there's so much demand for housing, but it's so hard to build. I believe anything constructed in Massachusetts that's 1980s or new is considered new because there's so little building that's happening. So as a result, the demand is high, and if the demand is high, the rents are going up, right? And with Massachusetts, they have a lot of Section 8 rents, right? Like housing assistance rents. So worst case, and there's a large demand, huge demand for that, right? Worst case, you could always, specialize with Section 8 tenants, and the great thing about Section 8 tenants is lower vacancy. They normally stay for 5+ years. You're guaranteed to get a rent increase every year, and you don't have to fight the tenant over that. And the tenant's payment, the rent going up doesn't affect the tenant's payment. Literally, Section 8 figures out the financial health of the tenant and determines what they can afford and covers the difference. So I could institute 100% rent increase in the tenant. The tenant's payment might not even change, right? And I've done that many times. I've bought buildings where Section 8 tenants were paying $1,200. The organization, I bumped it up to $2,200. Like the Section 8 tenants' rents didn't even move, right? And I got double the rent.
Fantastic. Yeah, very good. So, and are there any rent restrictions in your markets, or is that even come into play?
There are no rent restrictions or associated with any place I invest in. And I don't know if I would invest in a place like that because that makes your job challenging, especially with value add multi. I mean, if you're buying value add multi, you're buying them, 40 to 50 to 60% below where rents can be, and you're betting on your ability to stabilize, which I'm very confident in mine and my partner's ability to stabilize.
Okay. And there's been a lot in the news about insurance and taxes going up pretty significantly over the last couple of years. Are you seeing something similar in your market, or is it really kind of a moot point there?
No, absolutely. Insurance, water, utilities, everything is going up. But thankfully, the rents are going up as well, right? So it's kind of staying level. But yeah, to your point, you definitely have to take that into consideration in your underwriting, because if you don't and you close in the deal, your cash on cash return is going to look a lot less sexy than what you thought it was.
Love it. Love it. Well, it sounds like you've got all the areas covered. You've got property management. You've got the renovation and the stabilization process figured out. You've got a lot of strategies for handling year over year rent increases and potentially even Section 8. So if our listeners were interested in connecting with you, Andrew, to hear more about potential partnerships, how would they find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Investor Freed and also Facebook and LinkedIn at Andrew Freed. And I would say sign up for my newsletter. We put out monthly communications going over all the deals we're doing, offer investor insight, offer recent articles that we recommend reading, podcasts that I've been on, me and my partner's been on, investor tips. We have it's literally like a 15-page document that we put a lot of effort into.
Okay. Yeah.
And check it out. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been really, really educational. I love the space that you're in. It's being in the space that I am. I dream about the days of getting back into the active space a little bit as well. But yeah, I'm sure it's not an 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or even 8 to 10 or something. But you're clearly doing very good things. Congratulations on all the success you've seen so far.
Thank you. I mean, to your point, it does come with hard work. I think it's more like a 5 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Sure.
So it is.
Yeah.
But I love it. I live and breathe this stuff, so I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, I joke sometimes the same thing. Like I finally left the W-2 corporate America job working 8 to 5, so I can work 16-hour days and make a quarter of what I was making back in the day. But the entrepreneurial journey is something special for sure. So
Yeah.
very good. All right. Well, I do have a few questions I'd like to ask everybody before we wrap up. So we'll go ahead and jump into those right away. Is there a educational resource that you would suggest to a new or newer passive investor so they could start their journey?
One really good book I highly recommend for limited partners interested in getting into syndications or passive investing would be Hands Off Investor by Brian Burke. I'm sure plenty of your guests have recommended that book, but it's a really solid strategy on how to vet potential GPs and vet deals and determine if this is actually a good investment or not. And I think the best tip in the book I would say would be, the most important aspect in any syndication or any passive investment is not the deal. It's not the market. It's the operator, right? And the most important quality when it comes to me and an operator is integrity. Like, this person needs to prefer losing their own money than lose your money, and need to be extremely transparent and extremely honest. Like, those are the highest qualities I look for in people who are going to be controlling my money.
I love it. And I love the fact that as an operator, you're suggesting that book. Because any operator that's been through that book has taken their game to an entirely different level just by following his guidelines. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. We do hear that book over and over and over again. And listeners, if you've not picked up the book yet, for one reason or another, shoot me an email. I will send you a copy of it. It is hands down the best book in this space, and a must read before you start investing with other people and other operators. So yeah, thank you again for bringing that up, Andrew. Now, you and I are both part of a community called GoBundance, and one of the pillars in that group is bucket list adventures. So I'm curious, do you have a recent bucket list adventure you've checked off your list, or are you planning on doing so here in the near future?
I did recently, about 2-3 months ago. I ended up going to Peru. And I was in I ended up camping in the rainforest for a week with no cell phone, no internet, no electricity, no shoes. I went to like a healing center, and it was absolutely incredible. Probably one of the most enlightening times of my life. And I truly enjoyed it. I highly recommend kind of going. Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. All I could really do there was I could meditate, I could read, I could swim in the Amazon, and I could hike. And it was magical, to say the least.
I love it. So you said swim in the Amazon. Isn't that where piranha are?
There weren't any piranha there. It was okay. So I don't know. It was like an offshoot. It's the Amazon's gigantic. Yeah. It was like an offshoot river, but I don't know. I swam there every day. It was like 90 degrees. I had to. So
that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, congrats on that. What an amazing journey. I want to go. I want to travel everywhere. So anytime I hear somewhere where somebody else has traveled, immediately my bucket list gets longer. So that sounds amazing. Thank you. All right. Final question here. If you had, and I know this one, when we discussed it earlier, is always challenging, but if you had $100,000 you had to invest in the next week to 10 days, but you could not put it in one of your own deals, where would you invest that $100,000?
I would invest in myself. I would put that in the bank. I would leave my W-2, which I currently have, and I would go full-time real estate investor. That's what I would do.
I love it. So you would invest in yourself. Would it be some training? Would it be a certification? Would it be mindset? Would it be coaching?
It would be peace of mind to have that money in the bank, that I feel good enough to leave my job.
Okay.
It would be peace of mind, I would say. That's what that would allow me, peace of mind.
I love it. Well, no doubt with the trajectory you've seen in the last couple of years, that day will come soon. So, maybe it's just another refi that'll put that $100,000 in your pocket, right?
I got $50,000 on the way. I'm counting down the days.
Fantastic. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun getting to know you, getting to know more about your business and the opportunities you can bring to investors. So, yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting this fantastic podcast together.
Awesome. All right. To the investors, as always, we encourage you to continue that education journey. But more important than that, make the decision to invest in your first passive investment deal. I'm convinced that once you do, you'll be so glad that you did and just wish that you had started sooner. So be sure to join us again next Thursday for another great episode. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.